Imagine losing one of your most precious gifts, your sight, and then discovering a new vision deeper than what eyes can see. This is not just a sonnet about loss, it is a deep meditation on faith, patience, and purpose in the face of adversity. Join me as we explore how John Milton turns personal despair into timeless hope, revealing that true service goes beyond physical ability in his powerful poem on his blindness. If we are to summarize John Milton's life very briefly, it was broadly divided into two phases, or rather three phases. The first phase, when he was in his college and then moving around Europe, it was during this time that he produced some of the first poems, including some memorable ones like Lycidas. However, he got very interested in the political upheaval that was shaking his nation, and he joined hands with Cromwell, who brought down Charles I. And during this period, Milton was basically writer of pamphlets and prose pieces. Now, what was happening is during this phase, he was not at all focusing on any kind of poetry or creative aspects of writing. Mostly, he was defending Cromwell's government, as he was also employed as a Latin secretary under Cromwell. But after Cromwell's death, he went through this phase of disillusionment when he saw that the ideals for which he fought, they were crumbling down, and the democracy that he envisioned, it was not actually getting materialized in this new England. But that was not the worst that happened to him during this phase. It was also a time when his eyesight, which was already rapidly deteriorating during his pamphlet writing phase, it completely gave away and he got blind. And so imagine his life now completely out of that political excitement, that position of high supremacy. So imagine his situation. A man who was just trying to be a poet sees that all he has done in his life is just, written pamphlets after pamphlets, and he feels a certain kind of despair because now he feels that I don't have my eyesight. How am I supposed to fulfill that promise which I intend to as a poet? So, this sonnet was written during the early phase when he was turning blind, and it was around 1652 to 1655. And it is also known as sonnet number 19. Sometimes people refer to this sonnet mentioning the first line of the sonnet, when I consider how my light is spent. So, there are different ways in which people refer to this sonnet. Primarily, this is a poem of deep personal anguish, questioning, and as we know, that the sonnet form offers an opportunity of this question and answer, that kind of a structure. So that form is utilized best in Milton's On His Blindness. So let's read the poem together. When I consider how my light is spent, are half my days in this dark world and wide, and that one talent which is death to hide, lodged with me useless, though my soul more bent to serve therewith my Maker, and present my true account, lest he returning chide. So he is talking about his light, which is like a metaphor of sight. It is spent, so he cannot see anymore, and he has just spent half his days. Again, days here used as a synecdoche, and it refers to his life. So, half my days means half my life in this case. And he feels that this world is dark and wide. So, this dark world and wide, this is also a very interesting expression where the adjective dark and wide, they both are referring to the world. But see how the word dark is placed in front of the word world, and wide is placed away from it. If you know what kind of figure of speech that is, mention in the comments, because I've done this in my rhetoric class. Okay, so I know that you must know this. I'll just wait for your comments. If you cannot answer, I'll answer you there. Now, a very interesting word comes up. And that one, talent. Normally, we know that talent means ability, special skill, special power that somebody has. In this case, of course, it refers to the poetic talent. But the word talent also refers to a very interesting biblical story. So let me tell you that story very briefly. It's called the parable of the talents. Talent here means a type of currency, okay, like a coin. And this parable is found in the Gospel of Matthew. So there was this wealthy master who entrusts his servants, he had three servants, with talents, that is, with money. One of them receives 5 talents, one receives 2 talents, and the last servant, he gets only 1 talent. So the master goes away, and then after he departs, these servants, they use these talents in different ways. So the master comes back after some time, and he notices that 2 servants, they had invested that money, doubled it, and then what happened? The master gets very happy, rewards them, and gives them more responsibility, and says that you are very capable servants. But what about the third servant? Now, this third servant, he was scared to use that 1 talent that he was given. So he had buried it, and when the master returned, he saw that the talent was not utilized in any fruitful manner. So, obviously, that third servant was rebuked, scolded by the master. And this is basically a lesson which tells us that whatever gifts we are given by God, that should be utilized, and we should multiply them, we should be grateful about them, and we should not be afraid of using them, because that is what God wants us to do. So this is the basic storyline and the message. So when Milton uses the word talent here it has a double meaning. On one hand, it means poetic talent, and on the other hand, it means the gift from God which he was supposed to utilize. And that 1 talent which is death to height. So this is 1 talent which would stay with him till he dies, lodged with me useless. So, like that third servant, Milton also was not using his talent, and that talent is like a tenant who is staying with him but is not benefiting him, or he was not utilizing it. Okay, so it's useless. Though my soul more bent to serve therewith my maker. It's not that I don't want to use that talent. I want to. My soul wants to. I really want to do something with it and present my true account. I want to explain to God my problem, lest he returning chide. So this brings that story to full circle. It's like God, like that master who returns, God will come and ask for an explanation that what did you do with the poetic talent I gave you? And he would not be able to give a proper account. So, lest means in case or whenever. So, when he returns, when God returns, my master comes back, he will chide me, he'll rebuke me, he will scold me that what have you done with this talent I gave you? And then he's asking a very interesting question. And notice that this line is within inverted comma, which means it is a quotation. He's making a statement. Doth God exact day labor, light denied? So it's obvious that it is easier to work in the light in daytime, and we don't expect people to work with as much comfort and convenience during the night as they do during the day. All right, that is, I'm not talking about the world where nights are brightened by all sorts of smart bulbs and lamps. I'm talking about a normal situation, like we are more comfortable working when there is light, and when there is darkness it gets difficult. So he's saying that God has taken away light from me. So does he expect? Exact means God is going to expect that. So is God expecting me to work or produce something like a man who has sight? I fondly ask. So he's asking. Whom is he asking? He's asking God. He's asking his muse. He's asking himself. And somebody answers him. Who answers him? Patience answers him. Patience here is personified. Okay. Patience to prevent that murmur. So he was murmuring, he was complaining. Like, does God expect me to be as fruitful as a man who can see everything? So he was murmuring. There was a note of complaint. And then patience comes and stops him. But patience, to prevent that murmur, soon replies. And if you count the lines, you would notice that we have reached the eighth line already. And in a sonnet, the first eight lines, especially in a Petrarchan sonnet, the first eight lines or octave, they present a situation. So here the situation is that he is feeling depressed, he's feeling confused and distraught that he is not able to produce what he's supposed to because of his disability. So how is he supposed to serve his maker? So that is the problem that we get in the octave in the first eight lines. And then in the next six lines, there will be a resolution. And since it's like a turn is taking place, question and then resolution, this turn or volta comes in this ninth line or end of the eighth line. So the volta is kind of carried over from the eighth line to the ninth line, where patient is replying. So it's a turn volta. What does patient say to him? God doth not need either man's work or his own gifts. So patience says that God is not like he requires us to produce anything for him. Yes, he expects us to work, but that doesn't mean that he needs that work. It's not like if you don't work, God will be in a problem. No, God doesn't need that. Who best bear his mild yoke, they serve him best. Now, what is this yoke? Yoke is a special kind of wood that joins two bulls or oxen who work in the field, okay, who till the soil and all. So that wood stays on the neck of that animal, stops it from going astray, sticks the two of them together, and it's like a burden, a suffering, yes. But notice the word mild. So Milton's blindness, according to Patience, is like a suffering which is mild, which is not a big deal. That is what Patience is saying. And this metaphor of the yoke is very interesting because usually we do not associate the word mild with yoke. Yoke is a very uncomfortable kind of burden. Imagine the scenario and the situation of the bulls who are bowed down by that yoke and they have to serve. But Patience calls this a mild yoke. So when you associate the word mild with yoke, it's as if you are putting together two opposite kind of things. And this is called oxymoron. So this expression is both an oxymoron and a metaphor. Okay. Patience is saying that God doesn't want you to work for God. God doesn't need your products, whatever you're producing. God needs you to have patience and accept whatever suffering you are given. His state is kingly. Now, God is the king of everything. We all know that Milton was a very religious person, Puritan at heart, and Patience here, although it appears as if somebody else is answering him, of course, it is all going inside his own mind. So he believes that God is the king of the world, and therefore he has a lot of servants, angels, and other agents who keep on serving him. Thousands at his bidding, whenever he bids, whenever he orders, thousands at his bidding speed and post over land and ocean without rest. So they go on speeding across the whole universe, serving God. You don't have to do that. Nobody's asking you to do that. They also serve who only stand and wait. You don't have the power to speed around the world because you think you have a disability. No problem. You simply stand and wait. You accept your life. You accept this life as God has given you. And in your acceptance, you will be serving with as much dignity, as much fruitfulness as somebody who is doing a lot of work in God's name. So, the idea of standing and waiting, this provides a kind of consolation, and it is very interesting because soon after writing this sonnet, we see him pulling himself together and getting into this almost divine mode of creativity when he eventually produces Paradise Lost. What does this poem teach us? It teaches us, on one hand, that you have one life, whatever you get, you have to accept it and then be patient with it. And what does Milton's life teach us when we keep this poem in context of his life? That once you accept yourself, once you accept your disability, once you accept that this is what I am, this is what is expected of me, then you can actually outdo yourself. Milton at this point did not know that he was going to successfully compose Paradise Lost, Paradise Regained, Samson Agonistus. The best was waiting for him. And see, he was in such a state of despair, at least in the first 8 lines of the poem. So if you are at times feeling low in your lives, feeling that my destiny, my situation is not allowing me to excel. Think about this poem. Think about how this man was also feeling low, and it is okay to feel low because that is the point from where there is only one way to go, and that is upwards, rising high through patience, through waiting and serving. So, this sonnet is more than just a personal outburst, it's like a lesson in life. And what is more interesting is that if you look at the rhyme scheme, you would notice that he has followed the Petrarchan scheme. What was the Petrarchan scheme? The rhyme scheme is ABBA, ABBA, CDE, CDE. If you have trouble understanding how rhyme schemes are uh, identified, write down in the comment section, because I think I've discussed it a lot of times, and you can see on the screen how the rhyming words, they are assigned a particular letter and a pattern is emerging. Okay, so that is how we establish that this is ABBA, ABBA, CDE, CDE, and this is usually Petrarchan sonnet. But Petrarchan sonnets were all about unrequited love, all about mistresses who were unreachable, courtly love, and all that. So, what Milton is doing is taking a very established form or a genre, and he is infusing in it an entirely different kind of theme, a philosophical, meditative theme. He transforms the Petrarchan into a holy sonnet kind of a thing. And this is not the only time that he does this. He does this again later in Paradise Lost itself, where he takes the conventions from Greek epics and then transforms them, saying that I'm writing a better epic, uses their convention, changes them, alters them. So, this is what Milton is. He'll take a very established genre and he will reinvent it. So, it is a Petrarchan sonnet, but of a different kind of theme altogether. The meter is iambic pentameter. In case of Paradise Lost, he uses blank verse, but here he's writing a sonnet. You can't have a blank verse sonnet. So he writes it in rhyme, iambic pentameter, rhymed lines, and he also uses variations where he emphasizes certain portions in order to break that iambic meter. That is okay, that happens in all kinds of sonnets. So, when you're preparing for your exams and you have this poem in your syllabus, you might be asked questions on the central idea. You might be asked reference to context type questions, especially with that line which has the word talent. Don't forget to mention the parable of the talents there. Okay. You might also be asked to consider this poem as a sonnet. In that case, please mention all the points that I have told you. Overall, this is a simple sonnet, and you should not have any trouble answering any question. But if you come across any difficult question from this poem, do mention that in the comments so that I can help you answer that. Usually, this poem is prescribed for first semester students in many of the universities. So, if you have this poem in your syllabus, do mention which university you are studying under and also share it with your friends. So, till we meet again, this is Monami Mukherjee signing off. Bye bye.